While we're talking about the early days of the Roger Robinson auction service, and give him credit where credit's due, I got this young man in this picture. His name's Kevin Worley, and he was a young auctioneer, I think just probably out of auctioneer school. Roger hired him to help him out, and Kevin for several years worked with Roger, helped Roger call sales. Great young man, a attribute for the Robinson auction service. Kevin worked with him for a good while until Roger's children started getting old enough to work too, and then Roger Dale, he started working with Roger instead, and Kevin went by the wayside. He still had a few auctions of his own once in a while, but I don't even know what he's doing now. But his name's Kevin Worley. Also in that picture is another thing that's important to auctioneers, and that's somebody that comes to your auctions, one of your patrons, one of your faithful people. That guy right down there with the toboggan on and a beard, looks kind of like I do now, but in those days I was a young friend of his. His name's Richard Day, and he and his wife Margie, they owned a business called Yesterday's Antiques, coming into Paoli from the north on Highway 37, just there on the left, a couple blocks, maybe 3 blocks north of the Paoli Courthouse. There was a business there called Yesterday Antiques, big sprawling building. Richard and Margie Day run that. Richard went to almost every one of Roger's sales, and this picture may be in another one of my videos back when I first began, because I talked about Richard and an episode that happened over on our street. It's an auction one time between him and my Aunt Colleen. But that's Richard Day. If you're a successful auctioneer, you got people like Richard that come to all your sales and spend their money and help the sale along. So that's the way it was with auctions. That's the way it was when Roger started. Of course, Roger did, I'm not going to get into things that he did that aggravated me, but he did some things that aggravated me too, but they weren't dishonest things. They weren't things that I could hold against him legitimately. I still get aggravated. I got aggravated at his son-in-law yesterday. What's today, Thursday? Yeah, yesterday I was at their sale. His son-in-law's an auctioneer too. See, Roger started out and he had little kids. His kids grew up. He had I think Roger Dale's the oldest. That girl, I can't remember what her name is. I think she's next, and then there's Stephen, I think he's got 3 kids. Okay, heads up. This is a late addition to this video, but I got to come back and make a correction. Today I was at the Robinson sale down in Orleans, and I ran into Roger Dale. I hadn't seen him in a long time. I ran into him, talked to him for a few minutes, and while I was at it, I asked him about his sister. And I said, "What's your sister's name?" He said, "Which sister?" And that threw me off, because I was of the mistaken belief that he only had one sister. Her name was Joy, by the way. She was the one between he and Stephen. But somehow it totally escaped me, and I've falsely reported in these videos that Roger and Mary Lane had 3 children when they indeed had 4. Roger Dale's the oldest. Joy, the middle girl, the one that married Tom Godfrey, she is number 2. Stephen, who I thought was the baby, wasn't the baby. He was number 3. And they had one younger than Stephen, a girl whose name is Kristen. I've never met Kristen, but now that I know of her existence, I look forward to meeting her. Now I'm sure she's fine folks, just like the rest of them. And both the boys became auctioneers. And the girl married a young man, and he became an auctioneer, Roger's daughter's husband. Tom's his name. He became an auctioneer. And they worked in the business. But they began working in the business. Started out, it was Roger, his wife, a lovely lady, and his mother. Her name was Janet. She was the cashier. when you got to the sale, you went up to her table and she filled out the information, gave you a bidder's card. And then later on in the day, when you got ready to leave and you had to pay somebody, you went back to that table and it was his mother, Janet. And she figured out what you owed and took your money. And other people, had different people do this and that. But early years, Roger's mother was the cashier. Roger's mother, I always called her Mrs. Robertson, and her name was Janet. She was one of those people that made you feel like you were important to her. She was intelligent. She had a sense of humor. She was fun to talk with. She was interested in what you were saying, or at least you always felt like she was. In my case, she knew my wife. She'd met Betty at auctions too, but Betty didn't always go with me. She always asked about Betty, called her by name. She knew my children's names. She showed an interest in what they were doing. She didn't just say, "How are your kids?" She asked about individual ones, and she knew what their interests were and what they did. And she was just a delightful woman. And I'm not the only person that felt that way about her. She made everybody, she gave everybody that same feeling, and she gave everybody that same respect and that same amount of her attention, to where you just felt like she was your friend. And when you went to a Robinson auction, your first encounter with anybody was getting that buyer's card. And when you left a Robertson auction, your last encounter was paying your bill if you purchased anything. And the person that you dealt with when you were doing that was Roger's mother. And when you went to one of their auctions, you went away from there feeling like you had a good experience, in part because of her. She never did anything to detract from the experience of going to a Robinson auction. And from my view, you could attribute a lot to the success of Robinson Auction Company to the people that you dealt with when you were there. And number one among those people, or one of those people, was Roger's mother, a delightful lady. I'm to this day glad that I knew her and consider her my friend. And then as the kids grew older, they got involved in the business. Started out as helping be ring men and other things, and then the boys got their auctioneer's license. The girl married a guy and he got his license. Robinson Auction Service, I think all four of the names, Roger, Dale, Stephen, Tom, Godfrey, I think is his last name. Their names are all on the business, their auctioneer's numbers. Good people. All of them good people. Actually, I like Roger Dale as an auctioneer better than the rest of them, but he didn't like being an auctioneer, I guess, because he don't do it anymore. I thought he had the most potential to be a really, really good auctioneer. Now, I'm not going to get into what that is. He could have been an auctioneer like the Bauer brothers over in Illinois. I said I wasn't going to mention any names, but I'm not going to say anything bad about the Bauer brothers, so I'll mention their names. Two brothers over there, Don and Dwayne, I think their names were. I think one of them's dead now. One of them's still alive, but he's old. Don't know whether he's still doing sales or not, but I think his business was like a family business, and one of his sons or son-in-laws or somebody still runs that company over there. Those two brothers, best auctioneers I ever saw, bar none. Those guys were good. What made them better than everybody else was they went fast. they could sell merchandise that a lot of people would have made 2 sales out of, and they could sell it in less time than it would have took any other auctioneer in their area or this area or any place I ever saw. Any other auctioneer would have took twice as long to sell half as much stuff in a day, and those 2 brothers could sell that stuff. And not only did they sell it, they got the money for it, and they went fast. And their crowd went fast with them. You know what the worst thing you can do if you're buying something at an auction? The absolute worst thing you can do is go fast. Because when you're going fast, you make mistakes. And those, I only got to know those brothers because they lived close to where my dad lived when he was over in Illinois. And their auction, I'd go over there for a weekend and I'd take one of their auctions in because they were #1 in that area, and they always had the best auction. So I always looked at the ads in the Antique Week and in the Mattoon and Charleston and Effingham papers over there, and I'd try to pick me out an auction to go to, and almost every time it come up to I had to go to their auction because they had the best auction by far, more good stuff than anybody, the biggest estate sale, they were it in that county. But I went to probably 5 or 6 of their auctions. You know, I couldn't go to their auctions all the time. It's 2 hours away from me. I just went when I was going over to visit my dad, usually. And the first 5, 6, 7 auctions I ever went to over there, when I come back, my dad said, "Well, what'd you buy?" I said, "Well," I start telling him. He said, "How'd you do?" I said, "It's awful." I said, "I'm going to lose money on everything I bought." He said, "What's the matter with you?" And I'd say to them boys that everything I buy from them is a mistake. And I said, they make you bid faster than I want to. And if you don't, they sell it. And you can't slow walk them and slow them down. They won't let you. And their crowd knows it. And so their crowd gets right. I mean, they just set their jaw and get in there with both feet planted, and they bid. Because if they don't, somebody else is going to get what they want, and they know it is. They don't get a chance to slow walk them boys because they just don't let it happen. They say, "Come on now, the sale started at 9:30. What are you waiting on?" And people would bid and bid fast. And it's one of the first places I ever saw this deal. It's what I call the pick up the slow bidder in the middle move. And I don't like this move. That's all I'm going to say about it. I don't like this move. But what it amounts to is this. They got the bidding going pretty fast already, and they got a guy wanting to bid, and they know he wants to bid, but they ignore him until it starts to slow down just a little bit, and they know they got a bid over here, and they take a bid here. And that guy's trying to bid. He's trying to bid $60. And they take the $60 bid here, and they take $75 from him, and they take an $85 or $90 right here. And they know they got that going on, and they make that person over there who they know is the one that's most apt to bid anyway. And this one over here is the most apt to bid again, and that guy they know is already close to his limit. They pick him up in the middle, and they take this bid. They take his bid to elevate his bid, and they know he don't want to bid, but they know that they're not going to have to deal with him saying, "I wasn't trying to bid that, I was trying to bid that." They know they're not going to deal with that because they know they got this bid over here, and they do that. It's not illegal. They got a bid. It's just the way they do it. They know what they're doing. They know you're not trying to bid, but they take your bid anyway. And sometimes this person over here gets the brakes on in time that it does. Then they got to back it up to you because this person here, they didn't think they were done, but they were done. And so then when I'm that guy, it aggravates me to start with. But then when I get hung when I wasn't trying to bid, it really aggravates me. And I give them that look that says, unless they're in the habit of doing it all the time, and they do it to me all the time, I don't confront them with it. But I don't like it. And I gave him that look. I says, I know what you did, and you know what you did, and you know I don't like it. How'd I get there? I don't know. I don't know. Wasn't aiming to say anything about that, but we're talking about auctions today. I told you I was gonna. I don't think I mentioned any names. I did. Dwayne and Don. That was one of their moves. But they always got away with it because everybody was bidding fast. Everybody bid fast at their auctions, and they trained their people to bid fast. You had to bid fast. If you didn't, you weren't ever going to get anything bought. So you just had to be on your toes, try to not make a mistake, set yourself a limit, and try to stick to it. If she wants to bid. Can't talk about the Bauer brothers without talking about one other auctioneer that I saw. I talked about the Bauer brothers and how good I thought they were and how fast they went. And I need to talk a little bit about this guy because he was the absolute slowest auctioneer I ever saw. In fact, the first auction I went to that he had something there that I wanted really, really bad. I thought he'd get to it in about an hour from where he started. It took him almost 4 hours to get to it. And a sale that should have took 2.5, 3 hours to make, it took him about 7 hours. It was after dark before he got done. And this guy was slow. When he first started, he was, I'm sure, the worst auctioneer I ever saw. The absolute worst. And I started going to his sales on purpose. You know why? Because people couldn't stand to go that slow. I mean, he drove people crazy. They couldn't stand it. And they'd come, look around, they'd try to wait him out, but they'd finally just leave. Well, you went to one of his sales, at the end of the day, you could just steal anything you wanted because you might be 3 or 4 guys there, the only bidders he had left. He's still going slow. Me. No kidding. I'm telling you the God's truth. That day, and days after that, I saw him do this. He actually stopped the bid. Stopped the bidders. He'd have $55 bid here, and he'd stop. He'd say, whoa, whoa, you're going too fast. He said, lady, did you bid 15? And he'd say, I got 15 right here. And he'd go back from 55, the people trying to bid and him not being able to keep up. He'd go, the last person he actually knew he had a bid from was this woman, 15, and he'd start over again. He'd say, 15, now don't go so fast. Did you bid 20? And he actually did that. No, he did that more than once in a sale for a long time. He doesn't do it anymore. I'll give him this. Well, I say he doesn't do it anymore, but I haven't seen him do it for a while. But yeah, it's amazing. But the guy, he's still working. He's still calling auctions.
I haven't bothered her all day. When you bid,
they were good. How'd I get there? I was talking about Roger and oh yeah, I was talking about Tom. He aggravated me Wednesday. He didn't aggravate me like that. Tom doesn't do that. he's got the he learned this from Roger. Spoiler alert again. I've been trying to get a little story I wanted to tell about Tom and a little point I wanted to make about auctioneers into these videos almost from the beginning, and I've started there at least 2 times and then got sidetracked and didn't get where I was going. So, and it sounds like we're getting ready to hear that now, but you're not. This is the end of video number 2. Thank you for your patience. I'm the Hard Times guy. I want you to have a good day. And I want you to look forward to video number 3, because I promise you, in video number 3, you're going to hear the story about Tom. We're going to talk about Tom in video number 3. So I can't tell you what the name of that video is going to be yet, but it'll be video number 3 in this series. I'll see you then.